Hello everybody and welcome to another somewhat impromptu stream. I'm still very busy at the moment. Should all be better next week. I'm hoping I'll have a stream schedule up next week. Hello Mode 7, how are you doing? Yes, so next week I should have a stream schedule up. It should be less work. It's gonna be a very quick one today. I'm just gonna bang the episode out. I'm just going to record it, and then I have to scramble to write, edit, and file a story. And then I'll hopefully have time to edit and release the episode tonight. But so it's just going to be a quick stream. I'm well. Thank you. I'm just a bit busy at the moment, which, could be worse. It's not only work. It's also like some private life stuff that's just happened. You know how it is sometimes. Sometimes you have to pick up the slack in the house and shit like that. And, God, my grandma's TV broke or got broken by somebody who I won't name. And I had to fix it. So I spent the day doing that because, of course, grandma's at home right now, right? And she's got nothing. She's got nobody except my mom to talk to and me when I come by once a week. So it's very important that her TV works. So I had to prioritize that. Anyway, as I said, I'm just going to quickly record this as usual and not as much interaction with chat as usual while I record podcasts. You know the drill. Everybody. Let's try to bang this out. Bang it out, and let's try to record. Why am I zoomed? Why is it always that zoomed out? That looks lovely. Let's see if that works. I love, by the way, that this is this cassette, and you have to like rewind it. God, the Zoomers will have no idea where that is and why you have to put that button there. What was I watching the other day? Oh, Der letzte Bulle, my favorite German TV show, with this policeman who gets shot in the 80s and then wakes up in the 2000s. And there's this guy, so he confiscates, like they have some DVDs that they have to watch that he confiscates, and he has this team watching these DVDs. And he like tells them, so make sure you rewind those when you're done. It's hilarious. It is hilarious. Der letzte Bulle is great, but it only works if you speak German. It's a very, very German show. But German TV is usually not good, but it's the best German TV show by far. It's like a police procedural, and with this guy who lands in a coma, and it's very 80s, all 80s music. He has like a car from the 70s, and he like smokes indoors and shit. It's amazing. Bang it out, and let's bang it. See if that works. I love, by the way, that this is this. Why can you hear that all of a sudden? It's like, I don't understand audio. I don't understand how this works. I don't understand how it works in Linux. I don't understand how it works in Windows. I have no fucking clue how it works on the Mac. But somehow, I sometimes manage to produce a podcast. So let's do this. I won't bore you any longer. I'll try to do this once again in one take. We'll see how that goes. Wait, I should probably see if those work.
Yeah, it's a great time to be a podcaster.
I aim to misbehave.
Seems to work. Right, let's do this. Let's get the show on the road. Let's get this. Let's get her done. Get her done. You're listening to The Private Citizen, defending your right to have something to hide. This is episode 70, for Wednesday, the 19th of May, 2021, targeting your citizens with spyware. Hello everybody, welcome to the podcast. My name is Fab. I'm coming to you live, as usual, from the city of Düsseldorf in Germany, where we are having an extremely rainy May. Very, very rainy, but I'm sure somehow it'll turn out to be the driest year on record yet again. trollololol. Somehow that always happens. Anyway, today you're here to listen to me. And I'm going to talk about a new German law. We talked about the crypto wars a lot on this podcast. And this is another episode in the crypto wars series, so to speak. If you go to privatecitizen.press, you will find the show notes, copious show notes for every episode. And there's always tags. And there's a crypto wars tag. And if you click on that, you'll find all the episodes. I talked about the crypto wars before. This time, the German government is doing something called, well, it's always been called that, lawful interception. It's a new law where they basically, if they can't crack encryption, if they can't outlaw it, they're just going to put a trojan on your phone and get the message contents that way. And they want to do more of that, and they want to have the intelligence services do that. So I'm going to explain that today. I'm going to explain what the German intelligence services are, because chances are you're listening to this from the US or China or Hungary or who the fuck else, and you will have no idea. And all the words, the German intelligence service names are almost as bad as the Danish intelligence service names. So get that done. I got some errata. I got something really wrong last episode. I have to apologize for that. And then a lot of feedback. And of course, I'm recording this live on Twitch as usual, and there'll probably be some live feedback on the show. But we also have some email feedback and some matrix feedback. There's a lot of stuff to get through. So let's do that. But before we get into the show, I want to mention something really cool, which has nothing to do with this show. But I have a blog. I write at fab.industries. That's kind of my freelancer journalism site. And that's my blog on there. And so I was listening to Security Now, and Steve Gibson recommended this book series called The Frontier Saga, which is going to be, if the guy manages to finish it, it's going to be 5 arcs of 15 books each. He already has 30 books written. He wrote like 30 books in the last 10 years, and they're proper books, like they're 200 to 300 pages. It's massive. It's amazing. This guy is like reverse George R.R. Martin. He just writes like the wind. It's really cool. It's not hard sci-fi, but it's like a space opera. It's really cool. So Steve Gibson was recommending this. I read the first book and I was like, this is great. So I wrote a little review of it, which I just sent to Steve on Twitter, because I was like, this. I gave him credit in the blog post as well, and I thought, well, why not? And so it turns out the latest episode of Security Now, as I'm recording this, is 819. Turns out I haven't listened to it yet, but I looked at the show notes, and apparently I am the link, like my blog post is the shortcut of the week, and he even quoted it on the show, which is pretty cool. I just wanted to mention that. Security Now is the second podcast I ever listened to. So I've listened to it from the beginning. There was a while when I didn't listen to it because not because of the show. I love Steve; he's great. But like I was doing security writing full time, and I was just like I was writing about everything. So that as it was going on. So Steve was basically recapping everything I had wrote about the previous week. And at some point I had to stop listening to the show. I couldn't take it. Like it was just too much. I was spending like my whole day, every day of the week, writing about this shit, and then getting it recapped in my free time. Was like, I can't do this. But I'm listening to it again, so pretty cool. So I'm kind of proud of that. I think that's pretty awesome. But anyway, let's get. I don't want to bore you with my blog post. Let's get into the show. Because first of all, I have to give a little mea culpa here. And as Harry Botana says in Twitch chat, that's enough books to destroy my private life. Yeah, it is. They're really easy to read though. Like I compared them in the blog post to The Expanse, and while I love The Expanse can be hard going sometimes. This is just like it's like pulp. It's like if you read Warhammer, it's like the Warhammer books. It's just like you can read them all. I didn't read enough, so I was like, I have a new regimen I basically made for myself where I'm reading. I'm trying to read about an hour before I go to bed or in bed, and then I try to read about an hour again during breakfast when I'm not awake anyway enough to like write or work. So I'm just gonna sit in there with my coffee, and instead of like just watching silly YouTube videos, I'm reading now, which worked out great for me. But anyway, enough of that. Errata. So last week in the episode 69, I was talking about the Gemini protocol, and I said something that was really, really dumb. I said that Gemini uses only UDP connections. I think I read that somewhere. I don't know. My brain, I think that, sometimes you read, or I don't know if you have that, but I read all day, right? I constantly read stuff. And it must have switched something in my brain. It's of course dumb. I should have caught it on the episode. I caught it like the day after I'd released the podcast. In the morning, I was like, what the hell did you say? Because I was going to look up like how that works with UDP, and we're going to look up specifics about UDP, and it's of course dumb. Because I also said that Gemini uses only TLS encrypted connections. That's like a basis of the protocol. And TLS, of course, uses TCP. You can't use TLS over UDP because TLS kind of needs that, I don't know what they call that. Like the connection needs to be trustworthy, whatever it is. Like it needs to be, you need to be sure that you're not losing any packets when you're doing like encrypted shit. Generally. So of course Gemini uses TCP because it uses TLS. And I don't know how I messed that up. But I don't know where I got this stupid idea from. I just wanted to clarify that and apologize to everybody. That was a brain fart on my part. And because, the show is all about, you telling me things when I do get things wrong, and I'm correcting myself if I get things wrong. I think that's very important. I don't want to have this in traditional broadcasting. I don't know what it's called in other languages, but in German, if you've ever been on TV or radio, there's this thing, the journalists that work there, they say, das versendet sich. So this is kind of, I don't know how to translate it. It would be kind of like it broadcasts itself away. The idea is you're broadcasting so much stuff that if you make a mistake, people just forget about it. While that, yes, that's the only way you can. It's not so much that these guys don't want to fess up to their mistakes, but like if you start correcting all the mistakes you make, especially during a live show, you'd just be, if you're just broadcasting 24/7, you'd just be just be swamped. But I'm not doing that. I'm doing an episode a week, so I think I wanna give credit where credit's due, and I also want to correct my mistakes. It's really important to me. Anyway, so that's the errata out of the way. Let's get into the main topic here. And the main topic being, as I already said, another chapter in the Crypto Wars saga. Now, in episode 49, which was last November, I talked about the Crypto Wars and explained it a little bit. And I also talked about legislation that is basically being prepared in a lot of Western countries to outlaw end-to-end encrypted messenger communications. Because the police is kind of like, we need to find the bad guys. They're using encryption tools. Obviously, encryption tools are bad. We need to outlaw them. Now, it's kind of, in some countries, and Germany being one of them, there are like vocal groups of people in Germany, mostly the Chaos Computer Club, the CCC, which do have some pull with government officials and politicians, and they read their stuff. And these guys are obviously nerds, and they know how things work. They're like kind of our crowd, and they're kind of constantly telling these guys, dude, you can't just outlaw. It's like outlawing hammers, because you can kill somebody with a hammer. That would mean you can't like fucking put nails in the wall anymore. And the bad guys are going to use encryption anyway. Like, if you're outlawing this, I mean, if you're talking like terrorists or career criminals, they don't care if something's out. I mean, they're beyond the law anyway. So then the next idea is something that in Germany we often call lawful interception, which is the idea is, okay, so you can't outlaw encryption, you can't crack it. So what we're going to do is, encryption, very quickly, just to recap that in case you're new to the podcast and new to this whole idea, if you have end-to-end encrypted messaging, let's say you have a phone, I have a phone, and we have end-to-end encryption, right? Then I tap something on my phone, it gets encrypted on my phone, sent to your phone, you decrypt it, and nobody in the middle, no server, no service provider, no app developer, if it works correctly, can read that. Now, of course, when it arrives on your phone will have to decrypt it to show it on the screen. Now, if somebody puts a Trojan on your phone, puts some spyware on your phone, they can exfiltrate the data at the moment where it's shown to you, where it's decrypted in memory. So that's like the new idea now. What we're going to do. If you can't put backdoors in encryption or anything like this, what we're going to do is we're going to put a Trojan on your phone and then get the clear text that way. Essentially, I also talked about this in episode 32 when I talked about the EncroChat network, which was these encrypted phones that were used by criminals. And that's how law enforcement did it there. They basically didn't crack the encryption. They either did stuff on the server or you can do it on the individual phones. And the German government is currently... there's a law that's being prepared to be discussed in Parliament, which is pretty much a done deal because we have a large coalition. The government coalition is so unified on things and has so many parliamentarians in their ranks. They have enough votes in the Bundestag that they're just gonna, law is going to be discussed and that's going to be passed. That's what's been happening for years now in Germany. That's how the Infektionsschutzgesetz I talked about, the COVID laws basically in Germany, how they got passed. There wasn't even anybody. There was like one guy in parliament from one party that's now really small. In the COVID case, the FDP, the liberals, basically the main guy from Christian Lindner, who's generally a jackass, but who's been like the only guy speaking out against this who even criticized it. There wasn't even a discussion going on. And this is going to be pretty much the same way here. I guess the Green Party is going to be against this as well. Maybe. We don't know. But it doesn't matter because they're going to put this through before the next election, which is in September. So we can basically assume that this law is going to be passed. If it's passed, I'm probably going to talk about it on the show again, but I'm not going to explain it. I'm going to explain it to you now because this is basically what is probably going to be passed. Now, since I'm talking about German laws today, lots of the links in the show notes are in German, in case you speak German. Otherwise, I'm going to, basically summarize the information to you. If anybody's listening who has, if something's happening where you live that is comparable to this, please let me know about this. Of course, there's always contact details. Go to privatecitizen.press. In the header of the site, there's a contact link right up the top next to the episode listing link, and it'll get you to ways to contact me. Please do that because I'm very interested in what's going on where you are, and I'm going to talk about that in a future episode. But now in Germany, this law that currently that's basically going to be passed that they want to discuss will make it legal for intelligence services in Germany to basically put spyware, or what we in Germany call a Staatstrojaner. Wait, Staatstrojaner! Jawohl, Kapitän, Staatstrojaner! Staatstrojaner means a state Trojan. That's what they call it, a state-sanctioned Trojan. They want to put that on your phone or on people's phones that they deem suspicious, I guess. And then they can spy on apps like WhatsApp, Signal, Threema, but also VoIP calls. This is going to be used for VoIP calls, which is all telephone calls pretty much, as far as I can tell. And video meetings, of course, which has become massively important in the last few months, obviously, for obvious reasons. But before I get into more details, state Trojan sounds like something the government would fuck you with for sure. Well, they also fuck it up. I'm going to talk about that later. What Seven was saying this in Twitch chat. I'm going to talk a little bit about the history of these things in Germany, which do not inspire confidence. But before we get into all these details, I want to give you a quick overview over the 3 German intelligence services so that you know what we're talking about. So in Germany, there are 3 intelligence services. The Bundesamt für Verfassungsschutz, often just called Verfassungsschutz, which is long enough, the BFV, the Bundesnachrichtendienst, the BND, and der Militärische Abschirmdienst, jawohl, the MAD. It's a great acronym, it's the MAD. So the Bundesamt für Verfassungsschutz is the internal intelligence service of Germany. It is. It also has, interestingly enough, separate agencies on the federal state level, and these are usually part of the police apparatus of the federal states. And the Verfassungsschutz is tasked with basically spying on people within the borders of Germany. And their mandate is, according to the constitution, to check on people who, quote, endanger the constitutional order. And that's why they're called Verfassungsschutz. Verfassung is the constitution, and Schutz means defense. So it's like the constitutional defense service. But also on people who endanger the rule of law in the country. And as I just say that, I see I skipped this happens all the time. So the little behind this, I'm not cutting these out anymore. So I just, as I'm reading this, I noticed I made a spelling mistake in the show notes. And since I'm doing this live to tape and I really don't want to edit it, I'm just going to fix this live on the show. So there are tasked with spying on people within Germany who endanger the constitutional order and the rule of law. The rule of law of the country. So that's basically, in Germany there's been huge controversies, especially on the Verfassungsschutz, because obviously they spy on Germans in Germany. And so the left often talks about, and I think they have a case that the Verfassungsschutz does not look after the new right enough. There's been lots of scandals where basically it's been figured out that half of all the people in the right basically informants for the Verfassungsschutz, that they're actually organizing shit, and they're much more happy to spy after like left terror groups in air quotes than like the right-wing ones. There was a right-wing terror group in Germany of people who organized, got together and shot immigrants. And that wasn't like the police wasn't doing any job at all to figure this out for years. And then they fucked up the trial, and it's like it's really bad. What 7 says, that is interesting. The domestic spying is built into the German constitution. That is why the NSA programs in the US are so controversial, that it is unconstitutional. Well, yes, the problem is the NSA does something very different than the Verfassungsschutz. The mandate of the Verfassungsschutz is built into the constitution, but under very, very different circumstances. It's also not worded like spying. So you have a good case in Germany as well that what the NSA was doing, which was mass surveillance, would be illegal in Germany as well. You have to understand that the German constitution is all constitutions are a historic product, but the German constitution is a historic product of World War II. And it is one of the raison d'être of the Verfassungsschutz for, its reason for being is that it was specifically tasked with, defending the constitution against right-wing attacks, right? Against something like Hitler's seizure of power happening again, and it is a very controversial intelligence service. It is often also not seen in Germany like an intelligence service. It would probably most be comparable to the FBI, which is somewhat. The FBI is specifically a federal service, but the way it operates in the actual states in the US is somewhat like the Verfassungsschutz operates in our federal states. And similar to the Verfassungsschutz, the FBI is often not seen in the public eye and in the press as an intelligence service. It is often seen as a police investigative service. And it brands itself that way very much. And the Verfassungsschutz does the same in Germany. So the Verfassungsschutz has this whole thing going of basically saying, they're not saying this, but, basically they're putting out propaganda that the BND is the evil spy service and they're just an arm of the police. I've talked to people who work for the Verfassungsschutz, mostly on the state level. I had a guy I talked a lot about for some time, who worked for the Verfassungsschutz, and their point of view is, for example, they do a lot of industrial espionage stuff. And like one thing he always said that one of the upsides of having the Verfassungsschutz is that in Germany, the police is by law required to investigate crime. So in Germany, obviously, we have a Roman law system. So we have civil law and we have criminal law. Civil law being, companies suing each other, people suing each other. Criminal law being you have a crime. And if you have a crime, the police, the state has to investigate this. And that's one of the downsides of the police. If you're an investigator, right? The police can't do certain things. For example, they can't do what police in the US does a lot, which is like they get like a small time. So if they have let's say they have a crime organization, right? Let's say they're building a RICO case or whatever. They take if you ever seen Sons of Anarchy, you know what I mean. They take like small time criminals and basically bust them and then give them deals to like be informants or, help out in the investigation against the big guys. Now, in Germany, there's lots of limits you can do that, because if you have somebody and you arrest them for a crime, you have to prosecute that crime. You can't go, he's just a small fish, we want to get the big guys. Now, the Verfassungsschutz, they can do that. They don't operate under this same umbrella, right? They're not the police specifically. They're an intelligence service. They can go, we know that you did this. They can basically even kind of blackmail you, right? They can do this thing with like, we know you are guilty of a crime, but we're not going to tell the police. We're not going to investigate this if you help us bust your boss or whatever, right? And the police can't do that. And of course, we're going to talk about that a bit later. They, of course, also have the freedom to do certain things that the police needs a warrant for. The police would need a judge to sign off on things, which is going to be an important point later on. Is there some sort of process they follow to get permission for spying, some type of warrant? Now, they don't need a warrant. Hello, Thanatos. How are you doing? Twitch chat is very active right now, which is nice. Nice to have new people in here as well. There's not so much of a process, which is the whole point of having an intelligence service. But there is oversight. But the problem with intelligence service oversight, we can maybe discuss this a bit later after I'm through the topic I'm going to talk about. But the problem with intelligence service, they have like parliamentary oversight. It's kind of like in the US. If you're in the US, there are committees, there are House committees that are oversight committees over the intelligence service. But from Snowden and the NSA and all those revelations, what happened afterwards, that a lot of the politicians who were on these committees are very either tame or they're like even sympathizing with the investigative people and the people who work for the intelligence services. So the oversight is often lacking. But anyway, so that's the Verfassungsschutz. So they're our internal intelligence service. Then we have the Bundesnachrichtendienst, they're the BND. They are tasked with spying on non-Germans who endanger the security of the country. And they have lots of boundaries of not being able to spy inside the country, basically like the CIA. Now, they have ways of getting around that by, work together with other intelligence services. We talked about this on the show. And then you have the intelligence service we probably in the press and in the public know the least about, which is the MAD, the Militärische Abschirmdienst. They're basically tasked with protecting secrets and intelligence of the armed forces, right? They're staffed by armed forces people, and their purview is very, very specifically only the armed forces, which is why, like, all of what we're talking about today shouldn't really concern us, because when we're talking about, like, our government spying on citizens, the MAD has nothing to do with that. in its mandate, right? If the Bundeswehr, the German armed forces are in Afghanistan, for example, right? And they're part of ISAF or whatever, and it's their purview to protect like that. Or like if, let's say, somebody stole the plans for like a new fighter jet or whatever, and then that would be their field. But since all of this is kind of like these days, thanks to the Bush doctrine of the war on terror, and basically this whole mixing up of the civil and the military sphere, we now have the military is fighting terrorists, right? So they're not fighting other armed forces anymore, right? So the MID is not only concerned with the Russian intelligence, like the GRU or whatever, trying to spy on the Bundeswehr, but also like domestic terrorists. And then it gets very gray. So all of this is kind of moving, getting, it's all becoming one big conglomerate, and it's getting very, very complicated. So you can't really these days, if you could ever, you can't really delineate, right? You could say, so the BND famously wasn't allowed to spy on German citizens. But we know through the Snowden revelations that what they just did is they couldn't. So if a German in Germany had a phone call with another German in Germany, they weren't allowed to wiretap that phone call, right? But the NSA was, right? Or the CIA, but in this case, mostly the NSA was. So what they do is they go to the NSA and say okay, you're not allowed to spy on Americans on American soil, but we are. We are not allowed to spy on Germans on German soil, so we just spy on the other. We spy on the Americans in America for you. You spy on the Germans in Germany for you, and then we just swap the information, right? And that was completely legal, and that's a big problem. And I'm seeing we have federal government employees in Twitch chat, so that will, if you have some comments on this, I'm of course always open for this kind of stuff. Yeah. So it's this is all very complicated now, especially when you're talking about this collaboration. One part of this law is there's a software and also I guess a network. It's called NADIS. It's short for the very German term of Nachrichtendienstliches Informationssystem. See, there's German, and if you think German is bad, there's government German, government employee German, and Nachrichtendienstliches Informationssystem. That's that kind of German, shortened to NADIS, where these services share intelligence. Now, until now, the MAD, for example, was not allowed to put data into the system. And this law's changing that, I guess, under the purview of terrorists, and then if the military spies against terrorists because they are have something to do with the German armed forces, they want to attack them or whatever, then why not share that data with the BND, right? That's the idea behind that. Now, if we're talking about the Trojans, which is basically I think that's the most important point. If you're a private citizen like me, you're listening to this, that's probably the thing that's interesting to you the most. Now, in more German words. So in Beamtendeutsch, in German government speak, this whole process of putting spyware on your computer is called Quellentelekommunikationsüberwachung. Shortened to Quellen-TKÜ with a U, with an umlaut. So if you see Quellen-TKÜ, that basically amounts to hacking somebody's system and then putting spyware on it. Because Telekommunikationsüberwachung was generally wiretapping. And this is wiretapping at the source, basically, is what it means. So currently this is allowed for desktop computers and in certain cases, or was generally done on desktop computers. And in certain situations also smartphone and tablets. Now the police does this, and it's been legal for the police to do this for a long time. It's generally done in terrorism cases or child pornography or something like that. If they have relatively hard evidence that somebody's engaged in this kind of thing, then they go, they need a court order. They go to a judge and they have a judge sign this. And there's relatively high bars on that. They have to show who they want to, Trojanize or wiretap. It's basically the same process as for wiretapping, which is why it's called basically the same thing. So they who it is, what they've done, what kind of proof they have that they did this, and it's basically a method where the police collects a lot of circumstantial evidence and then needs more evidence to convict somebody. That's the goal, right? So it's the way it's designed in the law and the way it's sold is basically you can't go on fishing expeditions, right? You're supposed to be like, okay, we're sure this guy has a ton of child porn on his computer, but we know when you bust his door in, like the first thing he's going to do is push the delete button. It's all gone. So we kind of need to put a Trojan on the system to actually find evidence, and then we can convict him. And now the other reason would be that, maybe it's a child porn ring or like a terrorist group, right? And they want to catch the other guys. They want to see who this guy talks to. And why I'm generally obviously not a fan of the police putting Trojans on your computer. If it's done in a very narrow field, right? It's in a very narrow field of cases, and there's within a democratic framework, right? There's oversight, there's judges, the court has oversight over that. Then I think you could argue it is okay within it is something that is within the rule of law in a democratic state. Now I would probably argue you still shouldn't do it, but I mean, you have an argument there. And that's generally the laws we have. And I mean, why I don't like them, I can understand why they are there. Now, but the problem here is that what they're trying to do now is give this power to intelligence services. Now, intelligence services, by definition, like one of their reasons to exist is especially to circumvent these restrictions. Intelligence services do not get a court order, generally. An intelligence service, by its very nature, is a organization in a state that operates outside of the general checks and balances and the general rule of law. And I think there's an argument that you could have that in a modern democratic state you shouldn't have intelligence services. The other side of the argument is that they are there. They have extra like juridical or whatever you call that, like powers, and you have to have that to fight to protect the state, to fight very, very bad people, very bad enemies that you cannot have under the protection of court orders and stuff. That's an argument. I don't specifically want to get into that argument in this episode. I mean, that would be worth maybe if I get somebody, if anybody knows any guests who want to debate this would be a great debate episode. Especially if they're on the other side of the fence, where they're like, we need intelligence services, and here's the reasons for it. Because I think there are reasons to have intelligence services. And, the whole argument for why the Verfassungsschutz exists certainly is one of these arguments. Now, my problem with the Verfassungsschutz in itself, I think the name is a joke, because I don't think they're protecting the Constitution. I think they're just a spy agency. The Constitution in a modern democracy is somewhat like it's somewhat at odds with the government, right? So generally you would, like, if you study politics, you learn that the reason that the Constitution exists is to protect the citizens from their state, right? The Constitution generally is not for protecting citizens from each other. That's what, like, criminal laws for. The Constitution generally is there to protect the parliamentary system, the order of the state, and the role of the citizens in there. And it often is against the government, because it's understood that you need a constitution because, I mean, you can have a democracy, you can have duly represented, elected representatives that form a government, and then you can have a government, especially if you're German, you know this from history, you can have a government that was duly elected, but that is still, like, doing things that are not in the interest of most of the citizens. And because they also make the laws, you kind of need, like, rules. You need, like, certain protections. And I find it really interesting that an intelligence service who is especially, like, its reason for existing is that it's somewhat outside of this construct, which should then defend the Constitution. And the Verfassungsschutz has problems. Like, if you look into the history of, I don't know about the MAD, but I guess like the BND, and especially the BND and the Verfassungsschutz, they have problems with, like, after the war, Nazi sympathizers running these. I mean, the BND was basically the core of the BND when it was founded, was basically the intelligence services of Nazi Germany. All the people running that were people who knew. I mean, there's a reason for that, right? You need people who knew tradecraft, who've been spies before, and you didn't have any from the Weimar Republic left, I guess. So there's reasons for all of this, but, like, it's problematic, and I don't understand how an intelligence service is the right mechanism to defend the Constitution. I think that's what the police should do. I think an argument would be that, of course, the police is an arm of the executive, and therefore, it is the state body that basically enforces the will of the government inside the country. And that you need an external service, but I don't understand. I understand that, but I don't understand how they can be, like, outside of the rule of law, basically. Well, like, why is there no like, what's the problem if you're defending the Constitution, right? And you're, like, doing certain things. What's the problem with getting court orders for that? There should be no problem at all. Like, there should be no case where it's hard to get a court order because you're fighting people who are against the Constitution. But yeah, that is the thing. Now, if you're actually looking at, so what they're doing is basically they want to give the intelligence services the ability to circumvent, like, to put a Trojan on people's computers, phones, whatever, and by their very nature, these intelligence services circumvent these checks and balances, like these, getting a warrant and stuff like that. The other reason for this law is, of course, that currently it is illegal for the police to use Quellen-TKÜ, so to use these Trojans simply to circumvent end-to-end encryption, right? If they go and they want to get a court order, they have to, basically have evidence that the guy then wiretapped, basically, did something really illegal and something really, really illegal. They have to show that they're not a journalist and, not a parliamentarian and people like that. But, like, they can't do that for the simple reason that that person is communicating end-to-end encrypted messenger, and they can't read their communications, right? They can't go, we're pretty sure that's a terrorist, here's the proof, we want to spy on his communications, and they're changing that. So the idea is that they can use these Trojans now to do lawful interception, to get at decrypted messages of encrypted communication channels. Now, the funny thing with this Quellen-TKÜ thing, if you look at its history, so Heise, my ex-employer, had a good story on this that I'm linking in the story. So since 2017, the German police, there's not one instance where the German police successfully used Quellen-TKÜ in anything, like in a conviction, or like to get information they then use to like bust other people. And one does not really know why that is. Like one argument is that the police, there's all these checks and balances, and the police really unsure when they can actually use this. And there's not so much like precedence for this kind of stuff that they can easily decide. Another reason certainly is if you look at the work the Chaos Computer Club has done into these Trojans, that they're shit. The German state spent, like the federal government spent millions designing their own Trojan. It was shit. Like it was so shit that like there was like the CCC had significant concerns that if they actually put that on somebody's computer, the Trojan itself could have been hijacked and then turned into a botnet or whatever by criminals. There's also always reported the lack of manpower and people who know this stuff, especially when we know that the German government, after their own attempts of creating such a Trojan having failed, they bought they bought such spyware from other companies. One of them being Finfisher, which is kind of like a UK German, I don't know. Nobody knows where they're really headquartered or really shady, but they have an office in Munich, and they did like phone Trojans basically. But like there have been problems with the German government bought this, and then they don't have enough people who know really how to use it. That's always a problem. If you're interested in more of this, I put a link in the show notes. It's in English. It's called The Encryption Debate in Germany 2021 Update by Sven Herpich and Julia Schütze from the Carnegie Endowment for International Peace. It's like relatively good. This still, kind of overview of the discussion that's happening in Germany, right? Where people that are basically talking about how, why you should do this kind of thing, why you shouldn't, and then the different changes in the law that came with that, and different governments trying to get more of these laws passed. Now, interestingly, so that's everything basically I have about this law. I don't know, as far as commentary goes. I don't know how, it's got to be relatively clear that I'm critical of this. I think it's relatively clear that the German government doesn't know how to do this. It's very dangerous, and it's it's bad enough if the police can do this kind of stuff, and if you give this power to intelligence services, it's just gonna get out of hand. Like the oversight over these services is not sophisticated enough. There's not enough oversight. They will not have to justify themselves from people. They'll just do this. They're just, I don't know. They're just gonna spy on people. I don't know, left-wing people, maybe even politicians, maybe even journalists, even though they're not supposed to. Who knows? I mean, they're not really being checked on to such a degree, right? If the police does this kind of stuff, they get a warrant, it has to end up like there have to be indictments, and then at some point they'll have to show what they did, and it will come out in a court case, right? And so the public has some overview of what happened, and there's oversight within the police and stuff like that. With intelligence services, all bets are off. And I mean, I don't want to get into this too much because I've talked about this in previous episodes a lot, but I I talk to a lot of investigators and police people as well, and I don't understand I understand it, but I don't think the argument is valid that they need this. Politicians and the police unions and whatever, they were saying, we need this, all the terrorists and all the bad people, they are communicating in encrypted ways, but you can always see there are always court cases where they bust these people where they didn't have these powers. I mean, I talked about the cyberbunker case in an episode here, and that's a good example. They couldn't see from outside into their encrypted. I mean, this is now website it's like Tor sites and whatever. But like they had no way of they wiretapped this. It was a hosting. If you haven't listened to that episode, it's like a hosting service that basically just hosted illegal websites, and they wiretapped their whole internet connection, and they couldn't look into the encrypted communication. They had no way to look into that, but there was enough unencrypted communications that they basically could build a case, and they spied on these people, right? They did like they shadowed them and all this kind of stuff. So the police has ways of solving this, of indicting these people. And intelligence services beyond that, they don't need these powers. They have enough powers as it is. And I understand why the police and investigative people always want this, because it makes their job easier. To which I always say, their job is supposed to be hard, right? You're not going to the criminal police because you shouldn't go there because you're lazy and you just get access to everybody's computer and then you do pre-crime bullshit. Like, you have to do hard fucking work in a democracy to investigate terrorism, murders, and that's how it's supposed to be. It shouldn't be too easy, and it's not like Germany's under huge threat, right? We didn't have terrorism. We didn't have anything happen since the 70s, since the RAF, the Rote Armee Fraktion, since they blew up some buildings and kidnapped some people and shot some people. Like, the terror threats we had in Germany from like Muslim extremists and stuff like that were laughable, right? I remember I was living in Bonn. There was this guy he was apparently blowing up the Bonn Central Station, which was a joke in itself. The Bonn Central Station, like Bonn used to be the capital of government, the seat of government of Germany, right? But it's tiny. The Central Station has like four like rail tracks, I think. It's tiny. It's tiny. Like you wouldn't like. And at that time when I was living there, like we're talking like 2007 or something, the government was longer and there was nothing. There's like some UN buildings. You don't blow up Bonn. Like if you blow up Bonn Central Station, everybody in the world is like, Bonn? What's that? Like they've all forgotten that it used to be the seat of government, right? You blow up something in Berlin. And then it was like this guy who couldn't even build a bomb. He tried to build a bomb from like a pressure cooker, and I don't think he even used like proper explode. It was laughable. It was absolutely laughable. And it's all like this shit. Right? And if you actually talk to people who know what they're doing, who are investigators, they will tell you, like, we don't actually, most of the time, and, this is out of the Snowden revelations as well, the NSA saying this in internal stuff as well, you don't have to know what they're talking about. You can just do metadata analysis, and you can basically figure out terror cells by doing like social graphs and figuring out who's talking to whom, right? You just get one guy is a terrorist because he's gotten drunk in a bar or whatever. I don't know what Muslim terrorists do, like, smoke too much shisha and I don't know, get high on, I don't know, and then they just talk, right? They talk to people, and then you do like social graphs, and you can basically figure out everybody who's in this terror cell just by who they're talking to and when, because they're talking to them at other times than they would talk to like their wives or their friends, and in other patterns and shit like that. So it's yeah. And Harry Vartana actually in Twitch chat brings up a good point. It's a good opportunity for a remake, The Life of Others, Das Leben der Anderen. This is a great movie. With one of my favorite German actors, Ulrich Mühe, who sadly died way too early. It's a great movie. It's about the Stasi in Germany, so the Eastern German Intelligence Service. And that should be a warning to everybody in Germany, because that was Germany too, right? That was like the socialist part of Germany. And they had the most society-destroying intelligence services intelligence service like almost ever. I mean, okay, in the Soviet Union, I guess it was worse, but like, they were basically spying on everybody at all times. They had like, they had like everybody enlisted, and it's just like a horrible story. And this is like about a Stasi guy who's like, listening in on other people's lives. It's yeah. And as Harry says, it's not like German police completely inept at these men. No, nobody. Like, no police is. And And I understand the impulse of like them wanting their job to be easier. I completely understand that. But like, that's their job, right? Their job is to ask for this shit. I don't blame the police to ask for these powers, but it's the job of the government and the parliament to like see through that and see like we're not on the brink of like a civil war. Our society is not falling apart, right? The worst thing that happened to German society, according to the German chancellor, since World War II was COVID-19, right? So maybe he should make some laws that fix the fucking health system. How about you concentrate on the health system? There's not, like, I'm looking out of my window here. There's no ruins. There's no nail bombs. There's no car bombs going off in Düsseldorf. You know, there's no Muslim terrorists. Apparently, Düsseldorf is one of the bastions of Muslim terror in Germany. But like, I don't see the cause to give these people such far-reaching power. So anyway, that's about the law they're going to pass. In researching this, I found a side note that I want to talk about, because there was another law that has been passed in March by the very same government, which kind of plays into this, because this was a law that gives the BND, so the Foreign Intelligence Service, much more power. And so they are now allowed to use trojans to infiltrate computers of foreign citizens outside of Germany. They were previously not allowed to do that. And this is hilarious. So the law says the amount of, quote, foreign networks the BND can kind of like spy on has been raised from 20 to 30%. And as I say in the show notes, whatever the fuck that's supposed to mean. Like, how do they don't even like specify what a network is, like 30%. So that's like, we can now look at 30% of all worldwide traffic instead of 20. Like, how do we even know how much traffic there is, right? I guess if they, as has been rumored and basically shown, the biggest internet connection point, biggest internet node in the world in Frankfurt, D6 is called. So it's been basically open knowledge that the BND mirrored all the interfaces there. So they're basically, if you just imagine this huge internet backbone connection, for every network card, basically they have a second one in there that just copies, like on the fly, just copies all traffic, and I guess writes it to disks. I don't know. That's basically was, again, like, there were already rumors that was the case, and then there were further hints in the Snowden documents that's happening. So I guess before they had to delete 80% of that, and now they're just deleting 70. I don't know. There's also some new rules that the BND can now cooperate more fully with, quote, friendly intelligence services, which is GCHQ and the NSA are two important ones there. I honestly don't understand how they're friendly intelligence services. If you've seen the news in the last 10 years, you basically have the UK Brexiting, right? And all of the German press and all of the politicians constantly ragging on the UK government. Then you had four years of Trump, apparently the worst neo-Nazi in government since Adolf Hitler, according to the German press. I don't know. And, the government basically saying, oh, yeah, the transcontinental relations are not that good anymore. But still, Trump's intelligence service is a friendly intelligence service. Like, how are the Brits aren't we, like, at least in economic, those are maybe with China, the UK and the US are the two countries that the EU is in most competition with, like, geopolitically. But yeah, somehow they're then friendly. Apparently the intelligence guys are all friendly. Like, it's the same thing I don't understand while everybody's going like, oh yeah, we can't have Huawei network gear because they're all spying for the Chinese. Let's put Cisco routers in there because like we're completely sure that the NSA, you know, if they build Cisco gear into German telecoms infrastructure, the NSA is not listening. No, we're friends. We're all friends. Like, or maybe they're listening and we know that and we're okay. I don't understand any of this. It's like, this is when I'm glad that I'm not a politician, because I could never twist my brain into these loops that these people do. But yeah, the BND can now better cooperate with GCHQ and NSA. So the law does say that personal data of citizens, organizations, quote, of the EU cannot be collected this way. This is also like the BND generally operates under this rule at home and abroad already. What is very interesting to me, so up until this law was passed, the BND was tasked with and authorized to defend against international terrorism, nuclear weapons proliferation, human trafficking, and then cyber threats. Relatively understandable, right? Do you know what it's now additionally fighting against? Crisis-like developments abroad. So I guess respiratory viruses? I don't know. International extremism, whatever that means. I don't know. Fridays for Future, maybe. Money laundering? Okay. Threats to critical infrastructure. Yeah, I guess that goes with the terror stuff. That's understandable. Now, this one's good. Proliferation of, quote, important technologies and software. Could mean anything. Could, like, literally, some German company developed a free-to-play browser game, and the Ukrainians stole it, and now we have to spy on it. I don't know. And now comes the doozy. Get this shit. The BND is now tasked with fighting copyright violations. They call it like intellectual property. Like, what the fuck? They can now put a Trojan on your fucking computer if, okay, you're not German, right? You're not, let's say you're listening to this, you're in America. You're in the US. You're in Tennessee. And the BND thinks you violated some copyright. They can put a Trojan on your computer. I mean, I guess it's only fair. I guess the NSA can do that to me. But it's like, how is our external intelligence service, who's tasked with protecting the German state and the rule of law, but like the interests of the German state, how are they tasked with defending against copyright violations? The German state itself has no stake in copyright violations, right? German companies do, but they're not supposed to be protected by the BND. The BND protects the German state, its government, its like governmental organizations. Like, how? I don't even understand. Are you like, if you're writing a law like this, are you this dumb? Are you this corrupted? Do you not understand what copyright is? Do you not understand what the role of the government is or the intelligence service? Like, I don't understand this from any angle. If I was in the BND, right? If I was a spy, right? I like Bond movies. Like, I like that shit. You know, I pursued a career in the intelligence service, which is hard. Like, it's hard to get in there, and then you're like a spy, right? You're like, oh, I'm gonna be the next Putin, right? I'm gonna get placed in some embassy, and I'm gonna spy on them, and then I figure out like my job is to investigate intellectual property violation. Like, what the fuck? I would have like applied to work for GEMA if that was like, you know, the motion picture industry association, like the MPIA or whatever. Like, how, what, what, who comes up with this shit? Sanatos says in Twitch chat, hey man, gotta keep Metallica safe. No, Metallica is not a German band. Gotta keep Rammstein safe, maybe. I don't know. Or like the Wildecker Herzbuben or somebody like, I don't know. This is just insane. Like, this is insane. I don't understand this at all. Anyway, I have to mention that there are special restrictions in this law. So if the BND wants to access data from priests, from lawyers, attorneys, or journalists, there are some restrictions. It's like they don't really explain, but it's like they're not supposed to. Now, they have specified that this includes freelance journalists. So I like to point out here on the record, important, this is all spies listening, please pay attention. BND, please pay attention. I'm a freelance journalist, okay? Right? Just keep that in mind if you're spying on me. Thank you for your attention. Just so we're clear. This also includes, quote, government critical bloggers in states where the freedom of the press is under significant threat. And whatever that means. I guess they didn't want to say blogger, because then every fucking Muslim terrorist bomber is like, oh, I've got a blog. I'm on Blogspot. nailbombs.blogspot.com or whatever. Oh no, then we can't spy on that guy. He is part of the press. Yeah, I mean, these people making these laws. So basically, why did this happen? So if you look at, there've been some decisions by the German Constitutional Court, the Bundesverfassungsgericht, which, deals with constitutional, claim, like challenges to existing laws on constitutional grounds. And they have in the past, especially after the Snowden revelations, passed several judgments that were very critical of what the BND is doing. And they passed some judgments that severely limit, like especially the data BND is allowed to collect on German citizens. This was especially a reaction to this whole thing I talked about earlier, where, the NSA was exchanging information with the BND. So basically, the BND was getting information on German citizens that they were not allowed to spy on from the NSA. Now, of course, our government, so you have laws, you have an intelligence service, and then you have the Constitutional Court, which is supposed to oversee the constitutional order of the country, which says, hey, government, your intelligence service is doing things that we don't think are right. I think this is a constitutional violation, right? What does the government do? Let's make a new law. Let's give them more rights. Let's fight back against that. These people. I mean, there's a reason they're politicians. There's a reason I'm not a politician. It is understandable. And yeah, as Thanatos says, there are arguments here, right? There are arguments on the side of the intelligence services. I'm just not on their side, but I do respect that there's an argument. And I do respect that there's an argument to have intelligence services and for them to have certain rights and whatever. And I'd love to get somebody on to discuss this. I don't know who. I don't know. Yeah, certainly nobody from the BND is gonna ring up and be on the podcast. That would be interesting. It'd be very interesting for me to verify that guy's really from the BND, I guess. They don't really have ID cards like the police. But, if you know somebody, if somebody is willing to step up to the plate, where you can contact me. Go to privatecitizen.press. I'm always open to have dissenting voices in feedback, live, in Twitch, via email. I have anonymous whistleblower contact form. You can contact me anonymous, and especially to have guests to debate this with, because I love debating, and we might all learn from this. So I think that would be cool. As it stands, I think this is not a good step forward. I think it is it's another data point in a large line of government initiatives to severely curtail our civil rights in Germany. But hey, that's how it goes. Apparently, right now, I'm just putting this. I forgot to put civil rights in the tags, and if you click on that in the show notes, you will see. Apparently, no. Apparently, it's not. Is my tag for this not civil rights? Is it civil liberties? I think I rather call it liberties, because rights is always like so loyally. Yeah, the tech civil liberties. And if you click on that, you see a long list of episodes where I talked about this. So it's obviously got a lot worse with the whole COVID restrictions. It's kind of, why I started this podcast in the exact right moment of history, I guess. But yeah, so far for that law, I'm going to keep an eye on what's happening. I expect it to pass. I don't think anything... Nobody's fighting back against these things currently in Germany. Maybe things will change after the general election in September, and maybe that will bring a change of power. We will see, but I'll keep you updated. And let's get into the feedback, because we have a lot of it. So, first feedback comes to us from a longtime producer on the show, Yevgeny Kuznetsov from Moscow. Always love hearing from him. He listens to this podcast a lot when he walks his child in a what do you call that? In a stroller, I guess. I don't know. When you walk around with your child to calm them down, to get them to sleep. My parents always used to drive me around the block in a car, because that always put me to sleep immediately. I guess you can't do that today without being stoned, unless it's a Tesla, then you're allowed to. Anyway, I was talking last episode about Gemini and how I think it's like the perfect off-the-grid OTG publishing tool. Yevgeny does not agree. Yevgeny says, I think the perfect OTG publishing tool is anything static, maybe even the Gemini capsule, published in IPFS. To me, it looks like HTML on IPFS is way closer to ideal than a capsule on a regular server. And IPFS, of course, being the interplanetary file system, which is like a kind of technology, it's a peer-to-peer technology, basically, where you host your content not on a server, a central place, but peer-to-peer on everybody's computers, basically in the cloud, on other people's computers. This has reminded me that that's on my list to talk about. Generally, I think it's overrated. I think this whole... maybe I'm going to do a wider episode on distributed stuff, because I think a lot of geeks these days, they're like all... It started with BitTorrent. I guess they're all about like distributed and how distributed solves everything. I don't think it does. So I'll have to talk about that a bit more. But my specific problem with what Yevgeny says is that I like Gemini because it addresses privacy and security issues with HTML, right? With HTTP that I don't like, which I pointed out on last week's episode. I do agree. I've said a lot that it's not meant to replace the internet, and it won't. So, I just think it's nicely off the grid because it's specifically not there to replace the web. Well, not the internet. I did that wrong. Said that wrong. The web. And I don't think just having. Yes, distributed, like putting your websites on distributed file system like this will help with censorship, I think. Oh, I don't know if you're hearing that. Kids are having a party out on the street. Isn't it curfew time yet? Damn it. It's not. I'm recording this podcast too early. It's not curfew yet. I think that it solves different problems. Let's put it that way. Super user says in Twitch chat, I dislike IPFS because I fundamentally disagree with the idea that content should stay up forever. We have had the luxury of growing up without our lives being so on social media, but I wouldn't want my teens to be immortalized for life. Yeah, that's an interesting argument that we can also have. That's like the German laws, das Recht auf Vergessen, the right to be forgotten. Maybe I can talk about that as well. I think I have a problem with it being there forever. I just have a different attitude, but that's a good point. So yeah, maybe I should do an episode about IPFS. And maybe also like distributed things. Maybe we can tie that together. I'll have a think about this. Anyway, let's move on. We've got more feedback. Stephen Hose has quite a lot of feedback, so I'm going to read all of this out, and I'm going to have a little comment there at some point. And super user says, yeah, in the UK you can request deletion when you turn 18. If your parents put you on social media, for instance. It's an extra to the GDPR. Well, it's not the GDPR, right? It's your local law that also, puts into local law what's set in the GDPR. I don't know. I think that ship has sailed. I think this deletion, forcing people to delete, it's hard. It's kind of like somebody writing something down and you going into his house and forcing them to like shred the paper. It's weird, but we're going to have that. I don't want to discuss that here. Anyway, Stephen Hose writes, I've been taking some mental notes and decided to write them down. This was going to be feedback from multiple shows, but I guess I had a bit to say about our government. The feedback is not necessarily aimed at you, as in Fab, but it is meant to provide more details to all listeners. I love to argue and discuss with people and to learn the thoughts behind viewpoints. I attack positions, not people. And I never take someone disagreeing with me personally. And that's kind of like my attitude as well. I think that's commendable. I think we are in a big minority there. But if more people would be discussing like that, it would be great for like philosophic discourse and like any discourse, really political discourse. I hope I could argue with someone for 4 hours over a topic and then have a few beers with them. Yeah, that's the best. Like that's what I want this podcast to be. Basically, that's what I want. Why I want all of you to write in. Okay, now comes the point that I'm just going to read out his paragraph here, and then I'm going to vehemently disagree with him. The U.S. government is a federal democratic representative republic. Yes, democratic, but not democracy. It's a fine line for sure. Many people get caught up in the term democracy. Pure democracy is mob rule. The old saying is 2 wolves and a sheep decide what is for dinner. Our founding fathers were wise and decided not to let people vote in the heat of the moment on each issue because that makes for bad decisions. This is why senators have 6-year terms. Unfortunately, our representatives now have instant communication with the constituents, and things like bowing to pressure on Twitter are making it harder for level-headed decisions to be made. Politicians are pandering to the loudest mob on Twitter, it seems. I agree with the second part there. I have to say you're completely wrong on democracy. There's no difference between a democratic republic and democracy. I think I addressed this once before on the show. Democracy is a way to give rights to your citizens and basically allow your citizens to influence government policy. A republic is a form of it's a way to organize a government, to organize how a state is run, right? You can have a republic that's not democratic. The U.S. republic is democratic. Democracy is not mob rule. If you look into history, I mean, it starts with ancient Greece. That wasn't mob rule. The ancient Greece was a way of having it's a representative democracy. It's what it's called because it's not the citizens deciding. It's not a direct democracy, right? It's not citizens deciding what the country should do, what the government policy should be. It's the citizens electing representatives who then get together in like a parliament. In ancient Greece, it wasn't really a parliament, but they get together in a structure and then form a government and discuss laws and make laws and stuff like that. Now, democracy just means you have elections. Democracy means the citizens, get to decide in regular intervals who should represent them. There can be very different kinds of democracy, right? Democracy in ancient Greece wasn't everybody. It was just men and free men, right? If you were a slave, you couldn't vote. If you were a woman, you couldn't vote. Similarly in Rome. And if you look into the history of ancient Rome, Rome was a republic, the Roman Republic. And it was a democracy. And it then stayed a republic, but quit being a democracy when the first emperor, abolished all these systems. Same with Germany. The Weimar Republic was a republic. It was a democracy. Although, when Hitler came to power, he abolished the democratic part by basically getting rid of the parties you could vote for. You could only vote for one party, which you can call a democracy, but it isn't one. And they also didn't call it a republic anymore, right? They called it a Reich, and basically an empire, right? Now, in Eastern Germany, the German Democratic Republic, the GDR, Deutsche Demokratische Republik, I don't know if that was a republic anymore. It certainly wasn't democratic. It's like China. I mean, they can call themselves a democracy if they want, but if you have one party, you can only vote for one party. It's not a democracy, right? That's the difference roughly there. I might have to do a special episode on this. I once did an episode on socialism. Might have to do this on democracy again, because apparently, I don't know what it is. It's always, people from the US saying that their country is not democratic, which is wrong. I mean, you are right. He gets into, I think, where this comes from in the next paragraph. So I'm going to read this out and I'm going to continue with some comments. Stephen says, further on, the Electoral College was brilliant. It protects the rural from the urban. While state legislatures are not required to follow the plebiscites when they nominate electors to the college, they always have. Each state has always been a block of votes because there was an expectation that there would be different laws in different states. While originally the federal government was restricted from establishing religion, the states were not. Maryland was established as a Catholic state for Catholics, feeling Protestant persecution in states like Massachusetts. How times have changed. Originally, each state had its own constitution that protected people's rights. After the war between the states, all states were forced to also follow the federal constitution and Bill of Rights, and they lost the power over religion, which was not even being used by that time. In the beginning, senators were elected by the state legislatures, making those legislatures even more powerful. Okay, I'm gonna have to close this door a sec. Give me a second here. The wife just got home. I thought I would be able to finish this podcast, but we had too much feedback. I'm just gonna close that door. Podcast taking longer than I expected. When has that happened ever? Right, I have to fix this. I think I'm just gonna start reading out here again. After the war between the states, all states were forced to also follow the federal constitution and Bill of Rights, and they lost the power of religion, which was not even being used by that time. In the beginning, senators were elected by the state legislatures, making those legislatures even more powerful. It made a portion of the federal government directly beholden to the state governments. I think it is a shame that it has gone that way. I wish our individual states had more power, like it appears to be in Germany. I think you need to add a second shirt about aiming to misbehave. That's a good idea, by the way. I'm going to try to do that. That would be a great shirt. And thanks to Harry Vatana for live subscribing while I do the show on Twitch, which also, I'm going to talk later here a little bit about how you can support the podcast. That's one way, and it helps. So thank you. So I think this is something I only learned recently, but I think this is the source for many people in the US thinking or saying that their governmental structure is not a democracy. It is now, but yes, it was a republic, and in the beginning there was no states to elect the representatives they would send to the federal government. To the House or the senators, they didn't have to have democratic procedures in place in the state. They could have also just decided, the state government could have decided, and I think they did at the beginning, we'll just send this guy. At that moment, it's not a democracy because they're not elected representatives, but it turned into a democracy by force of habit, I guess. Now, this process that Stephen describes of you have federal states and you have a federal government and you make the federal states follow the laws of the federal government, I think that is just modern politics, and there is no way around that. That is how it works in Germany. We have federal laws, and they always supersede state laws. What you mean with the states being independent. In Germany, we have the constitution names certain areas where the German federal states make the laws. So the constitution says that education, for example, and healthcare is in the purview of the federal states. So the federal government is not allowed to make laws in this area. The federal states do them themselves. If they would supersede them. And actually, I talked about this during the COVID coverage that I keep following up with. In fact, they have now the IFSG, the Infektionsschutzgesetz, is a health law, and it is a federal law, and the federal states have to abide by it. I think that's unconstitutional. I can't understand how you could read the Constitution and think it's not unconstitutional, but they have done. It's on the books. It's, as far as I can tell, not being repealed. The Constitutional Court has not said this is unconstitutional. So I don't know. But generally, this effect that you have a federal government and that the federal laws have to be followed. There's no other way to do that. It would be chaos. That's the same with the EU. That's how EU laws work, right? So the EU has a parliament. They make laws. And if you're a member state of the EU, then your local laws have to follow those rules. It always goes from the top down. That's the only way to do this. I do agree with the second shirt. We have to have an aim to misbehave shirt. I'm gonna design that. In the US, powers not given to the federal governments in the Constitution are reserved to the states and peoples. Yes, that's kind of. Aside from the people part, I don't know how that works. That's kind of the same thing. The German federal government does laws and then kind of leaves holes, and then the federal states can make their own laws. What would you call a one person, one vote democracy where everybody votes on every issue? That doesn't exist because it was historically not possible. I think you could vote on every issue now with the internet. I guess you could have a cyber democracy. The closest thing is Switzerland, right? In Switzerland, Switzerland has elected representatives, but they have a very direct democracy where basically if enough people bring a petition to the parliament, then they it kind of triggers a plebiscite, and then everybody goes and votes on that issue. It's kind of a bit like, in the US, you'd have that out on state level. If you have an election, there's always these propositions on there. That's kind of like the same thing. Actually, it's going to be interesting because Switzerland's going to have a popular vote on the COVID restrictions next month, which is, I think, the only place on the planet where citizens ever gotten to vote on these restrictions. So it's going to be very, very interesting. Super user asks, is it true that Imperial Germany was more federal than today? Just curious. Depends on what Imperial. There were three Imperial Germanys. The Hitler's empire was called the Third Reich, das Dritte Reich. So there was the Holy Roman Empire of the German nation. That was the original empire, I guess. Then there was the empire that Bismarck founded, which, exclusion of Austria. Then there was the Weimar Republic, which was the Democratic Republic, and then there was Hitler's empire. Hitler's state was completely centralized. It was all Prussia. Prussia was the biggest province, the biggest federal state, so to speak. Under Bismarck, it was already very, very centralized. This is why a lot of people blame Bismarck for the later rise to power of the Nazis, which I don't agree with, but he did certainly centralize everything on Prussia very much. The original German, which wasn't Germany, right? This wasn't a nation state. The Holy Roman Empire of the German nation was a collection of kingdoms. So there were no federal states. They were all kingdoms. Saxony was a kingdom, Bavaria was a kingdom, Prussia was a kingdom, Hanover was a kingdom, Weimar was a kingdom, Baden-Baden. There were these small kingdoms, and they elected kings, and some of the kings and some special princes elected the emperor. So that was very, very decentralized, but it was certainly not it wasn't a state, as in a modern nation state. Bismarck's empire was when Germany became a nation state. Before that, Germany was a collection of independent kingdoms, which explains why Germany is so different. Well, if you go to Hamburg and then you go to Bavaria and you spend some time there, you won't recognize. You almost it's the same language, but everything else is just very, very different. Anyway, let's get on with what Steve is writing here. Also, every state has individual voting laws. For Fab to vote, he can come to California on a valid visa, get a driver's license, register to vote, and vote. There is zero enforcement of U.S. citizenship to vote in a California election. Some states want to provide free as in I think monetarily free state IDs for voting. They would look like a driver's license, but only prove citizenship and residence location. This is being called voter suppression by the left. There's always voter fraud in U.S. elections. My mother has been dead for 3 years. Condolences, by the way. This last election, she got mail about voting in upcoming elections. The dead have always voted in Chicago, and he sends me a link to it's called RaiseTheDeadPodcast.com. Also, you mentioned that Obama was an outsider. Only in government experience he was an outsider. He came out of the Chicago political machine, which has a history of mass corruption. I didn't mean that, by the way. If I've maybe you misunderstood me. I think he was. I was kind of saying he was an outsider in the Democratic Party. The more I think about this, the more I think about Obama. I think Obama was basically a Republican. If you look at a lot of his policies, aside from healthcare. He was kind of like, Bismarck was very, very reactionary, right? Bismarck overturned basically the revolution in Germany and, solidified everything under the king in Prussia and all that. But he created social insurance, right? He had some very forward-looking social policies worldwide. He was the first to have some of these social policies. Kind of like Obama, who I think was pretty much very reactionary in some things, especially with in regards to intelligence services, what we're talking about today. A lot of these programs the NSA was later exposed for happened on Obama's watch. I mean, it started with Bush, but Obama certainly didn't go and went okay, I'm a Democrat, I'm going to turn all this around. I think he was a bit of an outsider in those powers. That's what I kind of meant. The power centers in the Democratic Party, the historic ones. The Kennedys, the Clintons, all those power circles. But he was certainly well established in Chicago, and he was constitutional lawyer. So, and I didn't mean it that way. Bismarck deliberately made it to, Bismarck deliberately made it to stop the socialists from getting too powerful, though. This is known from his letters. It was very calculated. He also marginalized Catholics and Poles. That's a very calculated. That's a Kulturkampf. That's a completely different topic. Bismarck he invented Realpolitik, right? Everything he did was calculated. He didn't do it to stop the socialists, by the way. He did it to stop the the communists. And he fought them, right? At the same time, he prosecuted, his state prosecuted people like Marx and Engels, and forced them into exile. But I wouldn't say that Bismarck didn't believe in the social policies. It was not like, I don't want these people to have health care. I'm just doing this to stop the socialists or the left. I read his collected works completely in my university studies, and he was also a very he was a part of the nobility and a landowner and stuff, but he was in some areas he was surprisingly against taxation for somebody who ran a state that ran on taxation. So he was a complicated man. I think he also saw some of the wisdom in there, but it was calculated. It was basically how can we treat the workers better so then that they don't go overthrow the state. I think that's a good idea. I mean that's what all politicians do. The Kulturkampf was different, but another example is basically his colonial policy, which I was actually doing a lot of work on in studies, where basically Germany, all the colonies Germany acquired, or the big push was under Kaiser Wilhelm II, so the Kaiser who sacked Bismarck. One of the reasons was Bismarck didn't want colonies. Bismarck thought colonies were liability, and a modern state didn't need colonies. So he was very, very modern in that respect. Generally, that's how politics works. And you have to understand that Bismarck was operating in a very different parliamentary setting than today. There were no fixed coalitions. Basically, back in the day, it worked like this. The chancellor was kind of on his own with his government, and there were many political parties in the parliament and many, many sides on any argument. And basically, for every policy he wanted to do, he had to pick his majority separately. There wasn't a whip where you go okay, you're a social democrat, and there was a whip for the whole party machine, and they were you, like it is today. You're a Democrat, you're voting like this on the issue. Parliamentarians were much more free to go no, on this issue I'm going to vote like this. And I think actually that was a better time. I wish if we could get back to that and go back from parties being so organized, right, and being whipped into, parliamentarians being whipped into these kind of elections, which is very strong in the US and the UK and in Germany as well. I think we would have a much better democracy, but alas, you can never really go back. That was a very special time and very special reasons why it was that way. But if you read about how these decisions came together, there was a lot more discussion and a lot more varied directions. It wasn't okay, we're a social government, now we're doing this. And we're a conservative government. It's 4 years, we're doing social policies. Then the other side gets elected, they undo all the social policies, they do all this Republican shit, or there's nationalist shit, or whatever. And then the other guys get elected, and then they undo all of that again. It was more finding a consensus with every decision. It wasn't perfect, but I think it was more interesting. Anyway, let's move on. We got Stephen from Raleigh, North Carolina, home of Red Hat and the Carolina Hurricanes. Regarding the meaning of the term fake news, I think Trump's original usage was simply to deflect from news he didn't like. It was to say, in effect, this is something unimportant, unworthy of being called news, something politically motivated to detract from the message I'm putting out, which is, of course, very important. So I don't think he was calling fake news untrue per se, but rather he was more dismissing it, just like his spokesman once touted their, quote, alternative facts. Actually, I think the alternative facts is an interesting term. I think alternative facts are very valid. If you listen to my episode on the problem with facts, I'm certainly not saying what Trump's spokespeople there were saying was right, but I think they were closer to the truth than the people who attacked them. But anyway, the meaning has expanded since then, but I think we do well to fight making, quote, fake news simply a synonym for propaganda or flat out lies. I think we need to fight the term anyway. I think it is propaganda. I think what you're describing there, what I think you're correct. I think that was what Trump was saying. That's propaganda. Trump was calling the media writing stories that he didn't like propaganda, right? That in itself is propaganda. But that doesn't mean he was wrong. Some of those stories, I think, were propaganda. Especially, like, he definitely picked a fight with the press, and that was why the press was fighting him tooth and nail for 4 years, because they couldn't stand being attacked. But, you know, some of the stuff he called fake news, i.e. the Washington Post fact check, here's how often Trump lied, that was propaganda. I mean, I've talked often about that, how that wasn't lies, and how a lot of that, you could do that about any politician, because a lot of that was just, I don't know, them doing something and saying something else. I mean, or like just being vague, where you're like, oh, he lied, but like, you didn't, for a lot of these, they couldn't even prove that it was untrue. To say nothing if it was a lie, because to prove it was a lie, you have to prove that the guy who said it also knew it was untrue, which is a lot harder. Let me tell you. But I think what you're basically, it's propaganda. Like, the term is bullshit because it describes propaganda, and what Trump was doing there was describing propaganda while putting out propaganda. That was his, I think that's his only real gift. He was really gifted in that. Like, he was really, really, really gifted. And the only problem I have is not like, I'm not even talking about Trump's policies. Like, my problem wasn't so much that he was so good at putting out propaganda. It was the press fighting him, right, and calling out his shit as propaganda, and then just buying everything the other side said, which is also, in many cases, propaganda. And you're like, oh no, that is good propaganda. And at the same time, of course, buying all the press, buying PR, which is also propaganda, and just buying that out. Oh, Apple has a new phone. It's going to be great. Oh, it's great. They say it's great. It's going to be great. It's great. So it's from Apple. Of course it's great. The head of the company is gay. It's got to be awesome. Anyway, thanks for all the feedback. I appreciate it a lot. As I said, privatecitizen.press, contact link there. Please send me more feedback. And with that, we've almost reached the end of the show. So yes, very quickly, this podcast operates under the value for value model, which just means you get it for free. And if you derive any value from it, I ask you to think about what that value is, and then think about maybe giving me some value back. And that could be, producing the show, as in writing in, telling me where I was wrong, giving me your opinion, giving me a view from where you are in the world. There's lots of countries we haven't heard from, which, I like the local viewpoint, and it's very important to me, boots on the ground, so to speak. And that's something you could do. You could suggest people to interview. You could suggest topics when you hear about interplanetary file systems, something like that. Or you could help me out monetarily, which is also very important, because I'm a freelance journalist, which I can tell you there's not much money in this kind of thing. I was watching my favorite German TV series yesterday, Der letzte Bulle, which is a TV procedural, and there was just this throwaway line, like they were investigating a editor-in-chief of like a fashion magazine. And she had lent somebody 25,000 euros, and this was a plot point. And one of the guys just goes, 25,000 is a lot of money, but not really for an editor-in-chief. And me and my wife on the couch were both like literally laughing out loud. We were like, who are these people that think like journalists or like editors-in-chief even editors-in-chief make a lot of money? Like publishers, yes, they make a lot of money. It's just hilarious. Anyway, if you want to help out, you can become a patron on Patreon. I use Patreon because it's just easy for me. It's an easy service. It kind of helps me that you sign up and it's a monthly thing. It's something I can rely on a little bit. So I know that when I sit down to prepare the show, to do all the work, that it's, they're getting something back. But you can also send one-off support, monetary support via PayPal. I hesitate to call it a donation because in Germany it is legally not a donation because you cannot tax deduct it. You can send money to producers at fab.industries. And I recently got a French message that was exciting. It was all in French. I don't know. Pepper was like, "Oh, hello." My French is, I'm sorry. I apologize. Bonjour. Somebody sent you some money over PayPal. It's one of your listeners. And I was very happy. I love the French, really. They do the best wine. By far. Anyway, that was very exciting. If you want to contribute in another way and I haven't accommodated you, please get in contact and we'll sort something out. Anyway, part of this is because you're doing this, and I call out everybody who wants to be when they contribute, when they produce the show and send me feedback and stuff like that. But I would also like to mention everybody who helped out monetarily for this episode. So I'm going to do that now. And those people are Georges, Steve O's, Butterbeans, Jonathan M. Heathy, Michael Mullen Jensen, Dave, Shelby Kruver, Vlad, 1I11G, Jackie Plage, Philipp Klostermann, Jaroslav Lichtblau, Michael Small, IKN, Kai Sears, Fadi Mansour, Bennett Piata, Dirk Didi, Joe Poser, Larry Glock, David Potter, Matt Jellyman, Martin, Mika, Tobias, Mode 7, Dave Amrish, Mr. Amish, Avis, Sandman616, Drive Zero, Ricky M, Barry Williams, Jonathan Edwards, Rizal, Captain Eckhead, D, Cam, No Reply, RJ Tracy, Robert Forster, Rick Bragg, and Eric Lilley. Or Eric Lilley. Oh, God, my French is horrible. Anyway, yes, thanks to everybody. As you can tell, a lot of these people also write in and produce the show in other ways. Seems to be like the conventional wisdom is like 1% of the listeners of a podcast, like if asked to do something like this, they do, like, they send money. But I think the people who actually do are very involved here, and they also are in contact with me a lot, which is great. And so some of these are also Twitch subscribers. As I said before, I'm recording this live on Twitch every week on Wednesday at some point on a not so fixed schedule. And everybody who subscribes there obviously is helping monetarily as well. So for this episode, we have Bacon the Pork, Brigadier Sir Nils Olaf, Flash Gordo, Mode 7's Unavailable, Mike the Dane, Sandman616, Acherontis 7, Redeemer F, and who subscribed earlier, Harry Vatana. So I'm gonna, you're making more work for me. I'm gonna have to put that in as well. Redeemer F and Harry Vatana. Not that I'm complaining. I'm not. See, and this is why when you do that, thank you, Centurio Apertus, who also just subscribed, and Centurio Apertus, who also sent in some feedback for this episode. So thanks to all of you. I appreciate it. I also have to thank Bytemark at bytemark.co.uk. They're a UK cloud hosting company, and they graciously provide me with the servers I use to distribute the audio files free of charge, and that's obviously very important. And that's it. I also have to say, give credit to Raoul Kabazali, who wrote the theme tune, this podcast, which is called Acoustic Roots. And then I have an outro song. It's something I've been doing for a while, and it's pretty cool. I like it. So this week we're gonna have some jazz. It's a song called Inserte. It's probably Danish. Then it's in. I don't know what it is. I'm pronouncing it Latin. Inserte by Bloodwerk Band. The Bloodwerk Band, not the Bloodhound Gang, the Bloodwerk Band. It's a really nice little jazz number that I really enjoyed. And that's it for me for today. I'm going to run now and finish this podcast. And if you're listening to it on the podcast, I've already done so and released it. I just want to leave you with something a poet said that he sadly left us a while ago and way too early. But this is something, when you think about all this COVID shit going on, I think we should take heart to what he said here. Stop rolling downhill like a snowball headed for hell. Stand up for the flag and let's ring the Liberty Bell. Let's make a Ford and a Chevy that still lasts 10 years, like it should. The best of the free life is still yet to come, and the good times ain't over for good. Isn't that a lovely song? Really I found that song. I was like looking for some jazz on Epidemic Sound. I was like, that's amazing. Anyway, I gotta run now because I got some work to do and then I got some chores to do. and then hopefully I can edit this podcast and put it out. But before I'm running, but I'm gonna rate you to Deadly Slop, who is an amazing guy. He's really nice, really cool guy.
We're digging a hole.
And he's playing Mud Runner. I think there's a new hard mode out.
All right, here we go.
He's like driving off-road vehicles.
Who the fuck plays these
No,
games?
it's Snow Runner.
I don't know, some losers, right?
And he listens to some fun music apparently. So I'm gonna rate Deadly now because I mean he's a good guy. He's really wholesome, really cool dude. I learned a lot about like Canada and especially the Maritimes from him, watching his Tarkov streams. Okay, I hope to see you next week. I hope I'll be streaming more next week and have a set schedule again. Fab.industry/stream. I'll be working on that. I hope it'll get less crazy then. Anyway, gotta run now. Thanks for watching. Thanks for being there. As always, it was a lot of fun. Thanks for live feedback. Really helpful. And yeah, have a good week. All of you as well. Thanks, Centurio. See you guys around. Hopefully soon.